Rupert Walsh was born and bred to ride racehorses, and in a career spanning a quarter of a century, did more than enough to be considered one of, if not the, greatest jump jockey of all time. The numbers tell the story of his achievements: 12 Irish championships, 11 times leading rider at the Cheltenham Festival, and most successful rider at the festival with 59 winners. But it was his enduring partnerships with many of our favourite racehorses that meant by the time he brought his magnificent career in the saddle to an end, we all knew him simply as Ruby.
Ruby, thank you for agreeing to be part of the series of Racing Greats, and it's nice for us on Racing TV to actually have a member of the Racing TV family to include in the Racing Greats discussion. But was it always a career as a jockey for you? You are kind of, or were bred for it.
Yeah, it was. It was something I always hoped to do. I could never have envisaged that I would be as lucky as I was. But yeah, look, there was always horses. Dad rode, Dad trained, my grandfather trained. Horses were outside the back door. Yeah, I always wanted to be a jockey. I mean, different children have different childhood heroes. Mine were always jockeys, so I wanted to be a jockey. And yeah, it was. Look, I had a wonderful time. I loved it. Must say it's strange to be sitting this side of the microphone now rather than that side. But it's a hell of a lot easier. You have to think of the questions, not me.
Well, in fairness, you kind of helped me with those questions, and Steve, with all the horses you've ridden through your career. But you just mentioned about your heroes and jockeys growing up. Tell me about who would be top of the list.
Oh, Richard O'Muddy, Charlie Swan, Brendan Sheridan, because he worked for Dad. There was all those people. Conrad O'Dwyer, you looked across the water, Norman, Adrian Maguire. You know, it was just a generation that were a bit ahead of me, but they were people I wanted to be. I wanted to ride like Richard O'Muddy, and I started to ride and got a bit older. I wanted to be able to think like Charlie Swan. Just different things. It was they were the people I looked up to that I wanted to be.
Obviously, your dad, having someone with the career that your dad had, was a massive help when you first began. You rode your first winner for him. Was it Siren Song? Siren Song
in Goran Park, July 1995. Mum owned him, Dad trained him. He'd bought him at Goff's the year before as an unraced 3-year-old by warning. Hopefully he might develop into a bumper horse for me to ride. So it worked out really well. He was a pretty decent horse. I rode my second winner on him as well at Galway. He beats Dance Beat in a winner's bumper at the festival in Galway on the Saturday, and he was shipped on then. But look, he was a great horse to come across. Dad, earlier in my career, I had a horse called Wild Irish to ride as well, and probably an unsung hero, and a horse called Butler Brennan that I rode. Back then you could run in any amount of bumpers, and I'd say I rode him probably at least once a week, if not twice a week, in every racecourse there was in the country. But yeah, look, I was lucky to have Dad all through my career. Obviously lucky to have Mum as well, but Dad from a guidance point of view, tactics, performance. Look, there are jockey coaches now. There was no jockey coaches when I was riding, but I always had a coach.
They're racing towards the elbow, and it's the plunge horse Papillon who's found a bit extra. He sprinted 2 lengths in front for Ruby Walsh. Battling on in second as Mealy Moss switched to the inside. They straighten up for home, 100 yards left to go. Papillon on the near side, Mealy Moss the far side, trying hard to wear him down. It's Papillon holding on with 50 yards left to go, and Papillon wins the Martel Grand National for Ruby Walsh and Ted Walsh. Second is Mealy Moss.
So for the first horse we're going to concentrate on is fittingly one of your dad's. 2000 Grand National, 20-year-old Ruby Walsh turns up. I think it's the first time he rode the National, I think, on a well-fancied, if the market means anything, horse of your father called Papillon. What was your feelings beforehand? Were you nervous?
No, because the week before the Grand National, even 2 days before the Grand National, Papillon was 40 to 1, or 33 to 1 at that, at least. I had been injured most of the previous winter. I'd broken my leg in Czechoslovakia at the Parda Beats meeting, and I had gotten back just in time for Cheltenham. Had no luck at Cheltenham, didn't ride a winner, hadn't ridden that many winners even before entry, so it was great to have a ride in the National. I'd ridden Papillon in a hurdle race a couple of weeks before at Leopardstown, and he'd ran okay. Dad had convinced his owner Betty Miranda he should run an entry. He'd been second in the 98 Irish National Bobby Joe. Bobby Joe won the 99 English National, or Grand National, sorry. And we were going there with Papillon. Was I nervous? No, I was excited. I'd had a ride in the Fox Hunters, so I had ridden over the fences, but it was a dream. You went to entry thinking, I have a ride in the Grand National. Like, what were your expectations? To complete? Probably were your expectations.
Yeah.
So that's what it was. And I remember going to entry. He was the only ride I had at the whole meeting. The old Wareham, sitting in the Wareham on a Saturday. Sue Barker on Match of the Day. Match of the Day was live from entry. Not Match of the Day. So Grandstand was live from entry. So it could start at 12 o'clock. Yeah. The grandstand music comes on, you're sitting in the Wareham, you're watching the whole afternoon unfold, and it's all coming from entry. It was, yeah, that's my memories before. Was there nerves? No. There was excitement. Sitting beside Barry Geraghty, Paul Carberry was one up for us in the old Wareham in entry, and it was just, yeah, it was excitement.
Despite all your subsequent wins, I know we're going to go through the better horses, best one in the world. That must remain one of your more pleasurable days. I think, giving it for your dad.
It was the greatest day. And if you told me you can have a section of your riding career back.
Okay.
I want that Saturday, Sunday, and Monday.
Really?
Yeah.
Right.
I did. That was an exception. It was an unbelievable time. Like Bobby Joe had won the National in '99, and he'd been the first Irish winner since Liscargo in the late '70s. So I grew up in an era where Irish horses didn't win the Grand National. I don't remember Liscargo. I wasn't born till '79. So all my childhood, you watched the Grand National. Do you think an Irish horse could win it? You were looking back down through the field. Like, I remember Laura's Bow finishing third or fourth with Conor O'Dwyer and thinking an Irish horse was placed in the Grand National. That's what it was. That's the way I grew up. So to go there, Bobby Joe had won the year before, the scenes in Rathote, and Paul and Tommy and the Carberries came back. But to go and ride Papillon, the old walk out through the long walk into the parade ring, the long walk from the parade ring around the back of all the marquees out for the parade, the excitement of it, the anticipation, and the thrill of being able to go out and ride in the Grand National. Like, and with the only instructions I had, like, just laid me up, Dad laid me up in the ring, just ride and make the horseman yard. That was it. Like, get to the first fence, make a plan about the second. Right. And lined up. Jason Titley was on my inside on Miko's Dream. Paul was beside me on Bobby Joe. Bobby Joe missed Faugheen. I was behind him, so I went by him. I planned on following Paul. We jumped 7 fences and I was in front of him. and then, but that's the Grand National. You're thinking, what do I do now? So he just jumped from fence to fence. I can remember heading out in the second circuit and looking across, and Peter Niven appeared down my outside on Hollybank Buck. And I was thinking, God, we're going slow. If Hollybank Buck was getting to the front. And popped the way down, Beechers pinged the canal turn, nearly landed out at the canal. I remember thinking, oh jeez, all the years I'm watching the Grand National, you ride the angle, you cut the corner, and I jumped straight out into the middle, heading for Faugheen. Lucky, there was a doll in front of the inside of Faugheen. Never figured out why. I think they couldn't just replace the spruce. Yeah. So we actually had to go wide at the next. David Casey arrived on my outside in Lucky Town, and we coasted all the way back up to the Melling Road, and crossing the Melling Road, there was 5 loose horses coming back down the mileway track towards us. I remember looking up thinking, I'm in front of the Grand National. Please get to the cutaway to the Grand National course before the loose ones get down to us. To the second last, Norman appeared on Melly Moss, and again all the thoughts. I suppose I had planned it as a kid. What would you do? Whatever you do, don't commit till you get to the elbow. Probably having that conversation with myself 15 times. Probably never thinking that I would actually have to enact it, and then committing him at the back of the last. And he pulls away and going to the elbow thinking, he's gone, I've gotten the better of Melly Moss, and then he stalled at the elbow and drifted. And I'm thinking, oh sweet Jesus. And I remember Melly Moss's head appearing back and switching my whip and knowing when I got to the water. And I can remember getting to the water jump thinking, I'm going to win the Grand National. Now it's only 50 yards. Felt like 5 miles. Those last 5 strides thinking like, this is going to happen. It was just unbelievable. I remember it like that.
Fantastic.
Incredibly vivid memory.
Fantastic, absolutely.
The way you just told that. But what about that walk back in that I imagine, it's one of the most famous walks in sport.
It wasn't even the walk. It was by the line. Ted was standing in the middle of the track. Brendan Brady, Katie led him up, walking back in, meeting Dad, back down through the crowds, and Ted Ted knocking the clingers on out of the way, like going from one side of Papillon to the other as people tried to catch him. And I remember looking down at Ted looking under Papillon, and Ted played prop for Naas at the time, and he driving lads out of the way, all the way back down into the winner's enclosure. Gillian was there, Mam, Jennifer, and loads of different friends, and just walking back into that surreal atmosphere, and to realise you'd won the Grand National, to go and do a press conference like sit up there at the table and do a press conference. And then I suppose when it was all over, Mum and Dad were coming home on the boat with Betty Moran, and we went to Manchester Airport. There was 14 or 15 of us in a minibus, and getting to Manchester Airport and having champagne and chips in the bar in Manchester Airport, getting clapped onto the plane. Like, Jesus, couldn't believe it. But then landing in Dublin, coming back down and driving into the village and Kill. And there was a BBC truck, a Sky truck, and an RTE truck parked in the village with the satellite dishes on the roof in the village of Kill. This just wasn't supposed to be. This didn't happen. And like the party that night, and we all ended up, Mum and Dad weren't there, so we all ended up back in Mum and Dad's house. But I remember getting up the next morning, doorbell was ringing, sort of 7:30, and Kevin O'Ryan actually was in the same room I was in, and Kevin answered the door. So Kevin got up and went to the front door, and it was a Notting Hill moment. Where Spike opens the door, Kevin in his boxers opens the door, and there's a Sky Sports camera, Sky Sports News, like Sky News even, are at the door, and Kevin closing the door. A friend of mine, Mark Power, making breakfast for everyone, and he put 2 trays of eggs into the pot and burnt all the scrambled eggs. There was a couple of more friends, Mark Madden and a few more, on the sitting room floor in sleeping bags, having tea and Maria and milk for breakfast. You can just remember the different stories and the different tales, and it went from there into Sunday night, into Monday, and it was just an incredible time.
And that incredible time continued, because just around the corner was Kamanche Court.
Yeah, Ferry House Easter Monday, and he worked, maybe it was the Tuesday after entry, maybe the Friday. He did a bit of work on either the Tuesday or the Friday after entry before Ferry House, which was coming 10 days later or whatever it would have been. Yeah, 9 days later. I'm not sure the dates. But he did a bit of work, and he just worked like, Jesus, like this day it'll win. And because he was a Triumph Hurdle winner. He was a really good horse in his day. He'd go on to be placed in the Gold Cup.
Is my memory right that he was brought down in the Arkle before running in the Irish
he was a
National?
maiden over fences.
That's extraordinary.
He was a novice, and in fairness to him, down the hill, Paul Carberry had won the first on Sausalito Bay and couldn't ride in the second, and Barry Geraghty got the spare in Frozen Groom, and Frozen Groom fell at the third last. And he was a good bit in front of me on Kamanche, but Kamanche jumped the third last fence. Frozen Groom was sprawled, sliding, about to rise, and when I jumped, Kamanche landed and took off to jump Frozen Groom, but Frozen Groom rose as Kamanche Court left the ground in the Arkle, so he hit Frozen Groom halfway up and got brought down, and then went to Ferry House, and he never missed a beat. So they were getting to Ballyhack, and they turning on the second circle, so he jumped the first 3 fences the second time, turned at Ballyhack, and like slowing him down. Whoa. Come back, like he was cantering, and I always felt I'd gone too soon on Papillon in 98, and I remember the whole way down in 2000 on Kamanche Court pulling him back, taking him back. Fox Chapel King was in front of me, Shea Barry was riding him, round into the home straight, then was 2 fences in the straight, jumped the second last, 3 fences then, jumped the second last, third last, come here, second last, come here. When he jumped the second last, he landed like with his mouth open, just let him roll to the last, pinged the last, and he bolted it. And then Dad brought him back to Punchestown. Yeah. And he ran in the Heineken Gold Cup. And again, across 4th last, he was probably the national that left the mark on him. I was going as fast as I was able. What fell? Doran's Pride and Miko's Dream fell at the 3rd last. They were upsides in front. And when Kamanche landed, he jumped one of the 2 horses on the ground. I think it was Doran's Pride, Miko's Dream maybe, but he jumped Miko's Dream and nearly jumped me off. And I remember, I have a picture somewhere, like I literally have my right foot on his back as he's jumping the one on the ground, and his 2 feet are tucked up. But when we landed, it was the old Punchestown, so the second last was on the bend. Yeah. but because of the loose ones, it had thrown Fitzy on stormy fair weather, and Norman on a horse called Muda him, I think it was, Adrian Maguire, Editing Boy, they'd all been thrown in off the track to avoid the loose ones, so they had to come at a 90-degree angle to get round the doll to get to the second last fence, and that let me back into it. And he powered down the outside, pinged the last, and in 3 weeks we'd won the 3 biggest chases.
Was extra- and of course you led Kamanche Court up.
Yeah, when Norman
When he
rode
won
him
the
in the
Triumph.
Triumph, yeah, in '97. What did he beat? L'Opera, Shooting Light, and Circus something of David Nicholson's. But I can remember that, standing on the chute in Cheltenham where the groom stand is, standing there with Ted and watching him coming off the bend, coming between them, and thinking the last hurdle was the winter. It was further up than it is now, so you were almost in line with the last hurdle, and to watch them coming between the horses, getting parallel with us to land in front and running up the chute behind them, shouting our heads off.
Oh, extraordinary. I mean, and the way you remember these things are so vivid. It's like you're talking about something that took place yesterday, but they were 20 odd years ago.
97, 25, 26 years ago.
We're going to jump forward a few years, but it's the same theme with the national. Hedgehunter was your second national winner. He ran well the year before. What was your memory of him in general? He's a good horse, wasn't he?
Yeah, he had been beaten in 5 bumpers, I think. Yeah. I rode him in a maiden hurdle and said to Willie, this just wants a trip. So I rode him in a 3-mile maiden hurdle. He bolted in. Don't remember much of him as his first year as a novice chaser. Remember Sam Curling winning the national trial on him in Punchestown. He'd 9-7, claim 7. I think he'd 9 stone in the national trial in Punchestown. I think he won at the length of the straight. Then the following year, I got suspended in Ascot, switched out in a bumper, and one of Hughie Morrison's clipped the heel of my horse and fell, and I got 4 or 5, whatever amount of days it was, for careless riding. Still feel I was hardly done by. And
18 years later.
18 years later. I'm still not over it, Steve. And going to the Tayes days, so David Casey rode Hedgehunter, Davy Russell rode Rule Supreme, Willie had 3 or 4, Hedgehunter won, David won on him, and then David rode him in the English National. I was supposed to ride one for Paul, Exit the Wave, I think it was. I got a fall on the Friday and broke my wrist. So I remember watching him in the Grand National the first year, and he fell at the last in the National Amberley House one. And then the following year, he'd ran away. I think Jamie Codd won a hurdle race on him, and he'd run away through the year, but he was going back to Aintree. And I remember, obviously I was going to ride him, and the plan was just to settle him. He'd ran a bikini the year before, get him to switch off, so I lined him up halfway, I suppose, down the inside, just get him to switch off, try not to be in front too soon on him. Good gallop, typical Grand National, heading out in the second circuit, and that the big horse of JP's Clan Royal was mowing along with AP, his head out in the floor a mile in front of him, an AP, and I kind of was gone second, jumping the ditch, and AP, Clan Royal is motor, and I'm thinking, I'm all right, I didn't want to be in front too soon, so I'm 10, 12 off him. If I use him as my guide, and there's nothing else in this race, only the 2 of us, I'll be aiming to catch up with him somewhere by the last fence, down to Beechers, loose ones, as they do in Aintree, came from right to left or left to right, whatever happened. Clan Royal ends up in the corner, and I remember Hedgehunter stop and jumping Beechers from a pretty slow speed. Chalk was on my outside on another one of JP's, trained by Douvan, began with I, wasn't Iroco, Iroto, not Iroto, can't remember his name, but we landed down off Beechers, and all of a sudden I was in front. Papillon Evans slowed him right down into the corner, jumped the canal turn, and he turned on a sixpence round to Valentine's. I remember coming all the way back up thinking, well, I didn't want to be in front, but he's relaxed, we'll just keep slowing this down. And crossing the Melling Road, Chalk arrived on my outside, Chalk Thornton, to the second last, and we were both, I wasn't sure what his finishing kick would be. That kick, would he keep going? Ping the second last, don't go too soon. There was a big screen between the second last and the last, and having a look at the big screen, and I could see, all right, there's nothing flying behind me. Ping the last, sat up again, hang on now, get to the elbow, and then go. But like, even though I'd won a national and I was in my early mid-20s, I suppose, I still couldn't resist when I got to the elbow. I'm not saying go on. I had tempered my anxiousness, I suppose, for as long as I possibly could. But when I got to the elbow, I had to go. I'm sure I opened him up and he sprinted away. Maybe I didn't open him up. He might have beaten number 6 Valverde the second year, but I opened him up and he bolted it.
Yeah, I mean, he had a great record in the national. He went on to be placed, or not placed, to complete a few times. Was it a race? You had a very good record of completions yourself. Is it a race you really enjoyed, look forward to?
I loved it.
Did you?
It's a great meeting, but it's a huge race.
Yeah.
I suppose as a purist, you would always think, well, the Gold Cup is for the best horse. But if there's a race for racing, it's the Grand National. If for people outside of racing, it is always going to be their Grand National. I rode in older Grand Nationals. I've ridden in the modern Grand National. They're different races, but still great races. And yeah, I loved it. It was a challenge. It was to go out in the older one, knowing that you could only plan to the first ditch if you were lucky. You couldn't guarantee yourself you're going to get over the first, second, and third. Yeah, because every fence was a new fence. The race kept changing. It was so tactical. Like between loose horses, there was no run-outs at the time. And like you had to ride so many more horses in the race than just yours. You had to, like, literally it was think on your feet, react, ride the situation. It was just complete. There was no instructions, no tactics. It was just, you got to find yourself a bit of room. Like a half circle, I used to think, if I can get that much space in front of me, that if that falls, I can go left and I can go right. And it was just all reactions.
You weren't sort of, I go down the inside, or you go down, you know, like you hear that some, I think Fred Winter always wanted to go on the inner. I don't know if that's true.
I always wanted to go where there was less horses.
Yeah, I know, okay. That makes sense, yeah.
So if I remember lining up in different Grand Nationals and all of a sudden there'd be a cavalry charge for the inside.
Right.
And I think, well, there's 30 of them down there has to be room out here. So, you know, and vice versa, or get to the middle, or, you know, get forward or get back. To me, it was where there was less horses, where you had less chance of being brought down, where you might get a clearer sight of the jump. I just played it but I probably rode a lot of races that way. Be at Cheltenham as well. You could line up at the start of a county hurdle. Where did you want to be? Well, I'll take my chance with less rather than more.
Yeah.
We're going to move into, obviously, Hedgehunter was for Willie Mullins. We're going to move into a period of discussing horses that you rode for Willie. And naturally, there are so many that we could talk about, but we've kind of narrowed down the list. Obviously, Hedgehunter features on that. The first one, apart from Hedgehunter, who I imagine is very significant to you, would be Alexander Banquet, for obvious reasons.
Yeah, hugely significant. And I suppose I won a bumper on him at Gowran Park. Wasn't Thursday's Day, I think it was Redmill's Day. And I had been champion amateur the year before. And he was going to go to the Cheltenham bumper. And I suppose not knowing, would I keep the ride on him? Yeah. Obviously bumpers in Ireland were confined to amateurs. When you cross the Irish Sea, professionals can ride them. But Richard Dunwoody had ridden Florida Pearl the year before, and I was thinking, well, who knows what will happen. But luckily, or thankfully, Noel O'Callaghan and Willie Mullins left me on him. And going to Cheltenham, it was the first year I rode at the festival. I'd ridden Papillon in the Kemboy. He ran badly. I rode That's What I Thought in the National Hunt Chase. He finished second. And I had Alexander Banquet in the bumper. I suppose I'd ridden a lot of the good bumper horses in Ireland that year. I'd won a bumper on Joe Mack. He was favourite. I actually probably never thought he'd win. I never went there thinking that he would win. I went there thinking, I have 3 rides at Cheltenham. Yeah. I'm going to get to walk out in the parade ring. I just thought it was brilliant. And yeah, lined up, booked out, always handy. Set sail, going through the wings of the second last hurdle. Joe Mack arrived with Connor, and thinking, Jesus, because he was a fast horse, I'd ridden him, but I knew when I was going to the wings of the last hurdle and he hadn't gotten by me, that Alexander Banquet would dig in, and he did, and he powered to the line. And I remember thinking, Jesus, I couldn't believe that he'd won. But it was a great start for me, a huge start. And then I turned professional that summer, and I won the Royal Bond on him. And he went to Cheltenham with a huge chance in what was the old Southern Lions novice hurdle, now the Ballymore, and Barton won it for under Lark and Weir. But I went with expectation as a novice hurdler.
Right.
Thinking that this lad, he'd won 2 mile, he'd won the Cheltenham bumper, he's just going to win. And it didn't happen. And I remember the disappointment of that. And I remember the disappointment, and I remember being probably annoyed at myself as well for expecting something was going to happen. And I think that day taught me a lot. I never again let my hopes get high.
Ever again?
Never again.
Wow. Considering the horses and the occasions that you competed in, that's
I was always from there on prepared, and I should have been prepared because I was a trainer's son. I knew how fickle is the wrong word, but I can't think of a better one. Racing is. Like, racing is about losing. You're lucky if you get to win, but you're going to lose more. But I remember going that day to ride him in the RS, in the old Sun Alliance, with the expectation that he was going to win, and then being shocked when it didn't happen, but being annoyed at myself for the expectation.
You went closer the following year, didn't you? Was it the following year, the RSA?
Following year, I was back from injury again, and he just got touched off in the RSA, 3 miles, shimmied at the last. The ground was too quick for him, actually. Thinking back on it, Lord Noley beat him, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Lord Noley.
Lord Noley, yeah.
Yeah, Lord Noley. But just quick ground, shimmied at the last, and didn't land running.
A first Cheltenham Festival winner. Obviously, we've discussed the Grand National, and we understand that. But a first Cheltenham Festival winner, what was that moment like for you?
Gosh, it was amazing. And again, a bit like, I suppose I never expected to win a Grand National. I hadn't won a Grand National at that stage. But to go and ride a winner at Cheltenham after watching Kamanche win the Triumph the year before, to go and ride a winner, it was incredible. Like, Dad had ridden 4 Cheltenham Festival winners in his career. He'd won 2 Kim Muirs, a Fox Hunters and a Champion Chase. And, you know, a little bit like that, you were talking about an era when there was 1, 2, 3, 4 maybe Irish winners. And in order to compete at Cheltenham as an Irish person, you probably had to be riding more English horses. So there was the realisation, I suppose I never, at the time, I didn't know whether I was going to turn professional. I probably thought my life, my career might be as an amateur. So yeah, I was going to savour it, because when was the next one going to come?
Quevega has absolutely routed these and runs home clear. Ruby Walsh in the saddle, partners Quevega to victory.
Beautiful leap by Quevega, and she's not even come off the bridle.
Quevega's going to repeat last year's victory. Murad's coming hard at her, but the mare wins it. Quevega, Ruby Walsh wins it.
They've got 100 yards to go. 4 wins back-to-back in the mare's hurdle for the brilliant Quevega.
Quevega's going to win it for the 3rd year in a row. This remarkable mare, Quevega and Ruby Walsh, driven out, wins it by 6 lengths or so.
Quevega now moves into 2nd. Can she do it? Quevega digging deep for Ruby Walsh, Serendine, and she's going to do a golden medal. Quevega's come through, and she's going to win a 5th mare's hurdle. Quevega.
She's getting a tremendous reception. And into the closing stages, Quevega, this remarkable mare, is going to win the race for the 4th consecutive year. 5 times at Cheltenham Festival heroine. For the 4th year running, she wins this Grade 1 and wins it very easily.
Glenn's Melody and Quevega, who's battling hard for this record-breaking 6-timer. It's Glenn's Melody just from Quevega, who's going to battle extremely hard and takes up the running. And Quevega is going to make history. The joy of 6 for Quevega. She wins again.
Quevega was brilliant. Quevega was a pleasure to have, in that, to have her going to Cheltenham with all that expectation, to have both her and Big Bucks, who I'm sure we'll talk about. Like, they were 2 fair aces in anybody's pack. And you were going to Cheltenham with the 2 of those stuffed up your sleeve when everything else went pear-shaped. They were a fair pair to fall back on. And she was a deadly little mare. I suppose she'd won as a 4-year-old here in Ireland. She'd gone to Paris to run in the Prix-Alain de Brie. Hurricane Fly was 2nd, she was 3rd. I was suspended. I jumped the water jump in Stratford instead of going around it. Got myself a massive suspension. which I didn't agree with either.
It's gone.
No, not getting over that one either. It was a genuine mistake. Still can't understand how people get as big a suspension for a genuine mistake as others are getting for deliberate acts. That really grates with me. So I missed her. She got injured, came back. I rode her in Punchestown in what is now the Quevega hurdle.
Yeah.
And she bolted up, thinking, geez, what's this thing? And going to Cheltenham to ride her in what was only the second mare's hurdle, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And so she coasted around and bombed in. But I didn't realise then what she would go on to be. She came back to Punchestown and we ran her in the champion hurdle. I think it was Shell at the time. And Punjabi beat her and she only finished third. And you were kind of thinking, oh. But she was fragile. And I think the prognosis before she came back to win her first maiden hurdle after she got injured in France was only iffy that she would make a racehorse.
Really?
Yeah, so, or have a racing career, sorry. So I think Willie did a brilliant job in managing that and getting her to win what she did. Like, it wasn't because he didn't want to run her. It was more a case of how often you could run her and how do you get as much as possible out of that. So yeah, we had her for 6 mares hurdles, 4 stairs hurdles in Punchestown. But she was a fair relief to have. There was one year in particular, both herself and Big Bucks won, and I don't think Paul or any other winner. Willie might have had one more. I know I didn't, I only had the 2 of them. But yeah, they were a huge help to have. Like, I was still riding for Paul and Willie, and it was the expectation was on you. But you needed the horses. In that particular year, I only had those 2.
Yeah.
The majority of her wins in the mares hurdle, as you already allude to, came pretty comfortably. But there were a couple where anyone who'd backed her at short odds had a little bit of a sweat on. I think when you beat the French horse, Serene Dane.
Yeah.
That was...
She clipped heels at the top of the hill. She was quirky, and there was times you'd love to have ridden her maybe a bit handier than she wanted to be, but she'd get to the start and you got the feeling she was thinking whether she would or she wouldn't. And you know, when it gets to race day, you're trying to cajole, appease. I guess you might give out to a child at home if it throws its dinner at you, but in a restaurant you kind of have to mind your manners. Let's be nice today. And when you get to a racecourse, it's the same with a horse. And you know, I got plenty far back on her, but that never bothered me. She was a slick jumper. She would pass a couple somewhere that would get me in a better position, but she clipped heels just as we were rising to the top of the hill to turn down for 3 out. And it's not a good place to get on the back foot. And instead of being able to coast onto the top of the hill and then meander down behind them, all of a sudden I had to sit. I had to let her get back on her feet, get rebalanced, and then wait till I got to the third last before I went after the ones in front. And Serene Dane was gone. And I was thinking, Mayor, I hope you're as good as people think you are, because we're a long way back here. But again, even when she jumped the third last, I remember thinking, they're a long way and I'm going to need a bit of luck, but I need the luck. And I just kept squeezing without really riding her to 2 out till I met the rising ground. And then when she started to go, she hit up the ground, didn't she?
She did, yeah.
And then she was very tough last year when she got back to beat Glenn's Melody. You know, she was getting a bit older, she probably wasn't as good, and she dug in that year to win 6.
So
that didn't look like
genuine is what you're saying.
Yeah, very. When you get her going, she was extremely genuine. You
Yeah.
just had to, I don't know, cajole her into going for dinner with you.
The next horse we're talking about is also a magnificent mare, probably one of my favourite race mares of all time, and that's Annie Power. Obviously, with Annie Power, one of the biggest memories that a lot of people have in racing is what happened in the mares hurdle. We've already heard you saying that there are a couple of things that you haven't quite let go yet. That incident in the mares hurdle, is that something that you are...
Oh, I've let it go. 20 other people haven't. I can't change it. There's no point in me dwelling on it. She fell. She wasn't the first horse or the last horse that I got to fall off. But no. And it was, why did she fall? How did she fall? I can't give you an exact reason, but I would have a theory. She was a brilliant race mare. She was probably too good. I didn't realise when she jumped the second last, Paul went by me on Glenn's Melody heading to the bend, and I went to go with him, and I opened her up, but I didn't expect her to go from 4th gear to 7th, and she jumped straight into it, and then she was just going too fast. People blame the shadow me arse. She was going too fast. I sat against her. When as soon as I opened her, she opened, and I thought, oh geez, no, and I just sat against her and just kept sitting against her, and she just fired herself at the last end. But I hadn't kept up the momentum for her to stand where she stood. I had held her to just say, come here, just jump this. And I was sat against her, and thought there was loads of room for her to take another stride and brush the top bar, but she didn't. She just let fly. Landed on the top of it.
I'd actually forgotten when looking through her record that the previous year she was a very good second in the World Hurdle.
Yeah, and she was too free. She was too free in the World Hurdle. She'd had a brilliant novice campaign. There was no mares novice in Cheltenham, so she didn't go to Cheltenham as a novice. She stayed and won the Grade 1 in Fairyhouse. She won a Railkill, she'd won at Doncaster as well. And she went to the stayers. She didn't stay. She did stay. She was just too keen. But she went to a really good stayer as well.
More of that, who was unbeaten at the time.
Yeah, and at Fisher's Cross, AP rode at Fisher's Cross, Barry rode more of that. I followed AP, Barry followed me. And she was just too keen. I could never get her to drop it.
But of course, she got her, and I know people, we're talking a bit of cliches about horses deserving, but every horse that goes out there deserves. But for fans of Annie Power, they would have felt that her winning the Champion Hurdle was just for a horse of her talent.
Yeah, but not everyone gets what they deserve, or
exactly.
Just doesn't always happen. But I thought it was even more than that. Obviously, we had started the year with, she ran in the mares because Faugheen ran the Champion Hurdle. 2 horses, same yard, same owner, and I wanted to ride them both. So you can be damn sure I was trying to split them up. Simple as. And she lined up. She was going back for the mares, and Faugheen got hurt. He had pulverised Nichols Canyon and the other horses in Leopardstown, and he picked up an injury, and all of a sudden we were running short on a horse you could say would win the Champion Hurdle. From having had Hurricane Fly, Faugheen, Nichols Canyon didn't look like he was quite up to it after being a decent novice. So to me, it looked obvious. There was no mare's chase. So we could switch Vroom Vroom Bag back to the mare's hurdle, Vroom Vroom Bag even, and we could switch Annie to the Champion Hurdle, but she'd have to be supplemented.
Yeah.
So she won in Punchestown, she won the Quevega Hurdle. And I remember saying it to Willie, he agreed. Willie spoke with Rich, and they agreed to supplement her. But there was a conversation. Do you think, should we? So yeah, stick your neck out, think she can. Her work between then and Cheltenham was okay. It wasn't inspiring, but she was never a fast workhorse. But I remember saying to David on the Tuesday before Cheltenham, so a week before, after she worked on the Curragh, she worked only okay, so she worked again on Thursday and she worked much better. And saying it to David, when I'm going out in this one, the Champion Hurdle, just remind me not to look back. And he said, why? I said, I'm telling you. I said, I looked back on Celestial Halo and I shouldn't have. I said, just remind me not to look back. So I remember looking back on Celestial Halo as we got onto the top of the hill, and we were a long way clear of Punjabi and those horses. And instantly I thought, we've gone too fast. I didn't feel it, but I thought it. When you look back and Barry, AP, that calibre of jockey, you're that far off you, I remember thinking, I remember sitting on him then, down to the third last and down to the second last, and then going, and he was a bit high at the last and he got beat ahead. Now maybe if I'd sent him off the top of the hill, he may not have got home. Yeah. But he got finished second, so you're always thinking, what should I have done? And then going out, I was adamant going out in Annie Power. I was just going to ride her, and I wasn't going to worry about where anybody else was or what anything else was happening. Obviously Nichols Canyon was going to go forward and be handy too. Sam was riding the new one. He lined up to go forward. But I remember just thinking, I'm just going to book this out. I was too keen in the mares. He'd have been too keen in the stairs. I'm not pulling. and whatever happens, happens. I don't think she'll stop. Climbed up the hill and up past the stands, gave her a chance, toned down into the back straight. I remember letting her roll, jumped that well, and then Bouvardaire's head appeared. I remember looking, I didn't have to look, because obviously your vision as a jockey, with the way you are on a horse or where your head is, you can pretty much see here, and looking and saw the funny bit he had on, and thinking, well, if he's this close to me, I'm definitely not going too fast.
Yeah.
And so I started letting her roll, and she just kept rolling, climbed the hill, down off the hill, going quicker, jumped the second last, and when I met the rising ground, sending her off the bend, and she started to lengthen, and I knew off the bend she started to lengthen. So it's going to take something else to get by me. Met the last spot on, she pinged it and all the way to the line. But she was a brilliant, brilliant race mare.
Yeah.
Like, she had some engine, she had a huge cruising speed. She was a joy to ride. Now she was lucky, she went to entry then, and she was lucky at the first hurdle down the back. She was millimetres from turning another somersault. That was in her, but she was still a hell of a good racehorse.
I think we tend to romanticise horses. I always watched her from afar and thought she was a very proud mare in the way she stood, and that sort of I admired her, the way she carried herself.
Yeah, and she would be here. She used to come here in the summer, and she'd be just in that field out there. But she would, and she'd stand there if we were out having a barbecue. She'd be looking over the hedge. She was nosy, she was inquisitive, but she, I won't say wasn't feminine looking. She was feminine, but she was bigger and stronger. Definitely had a lot of masculine in her.
Yeah. The next horse, also in the same colours, was again one of my favourites. And I always felt, even though he had a wonderful career, obviously tragically we never saw the full ability that he had, but he was a magnificent horse in Vautour. And I'm saying to Steve, coming here, chat to you, so one of the most mesmerising jumping performances I remember for a novice, when he won I think it was the JLT or the Marsh, I can't remember what they call it now, but the 2.5 mile novice chase at Cheltenham, and you sat on him, he just bounced over the fences. And the look on your face when I interviewed you after you crossed the line, I felt that you really enjoyed that ride.
Yeah, I enjoyed him. I honestly thought, I do think Kauto Star was the best horse I rode. But I remember riding him as a novice hurdler and a novice chaser and thinking, don't know will he be him, but there's a chance he could be the next one. And
I knew it.
You did say that, yeah?
I knew it.
I did. As a novice hurdler, even as a novice chaser, I was in Kempton when he ran at Leopardstown at Christmas, and he ran badly. He went back and won at what is now day one of the Dublin Racing Festival, but it was actually another meeting at the time. Went to the JLT, I think it was. He was spectacular. Jeez, on springs. And even when he won the Supreme, like to me, he wasn't related to a 2-miler. He just had a huge cruising speed. He was on springs, and again, just don't go too slow. Because he's just going to gallop them into the ground. Even in Navan, when he won a maiden hurdle, like when you hit the line, round the bend, you're going to the hurdle past the stands, he spots the hurdle and he's going to go again. And no horse was finished today. But he was just, I think he was an incredible horse. He won the Amlin, or whatever it is, an Ascot, went to the King George. I probably rode him a bit like Kauto Star. I thought he couldn't get beaten. Bucked out, travelled along, didn't think we went that hard.
He looked like he won it.
I know, opened them up. Back at the second last, went to win, missed the last. Q card nabbed him on the line. I think the race probably left the mark on him because he showed nothing from there through the rest of the spring. And I remember thinking, as Cheltenham was getting closer, we'd Jackadam in the Gold Cup. We had a few different horses for the Ryanair, and 10 days, not even 10 days, a week before the Gold Cup, so it was a Friday, Willie's saying Jackadam had worked, Vautour had worked, and I said, you couldn't ride Vautour. He agreed. So I was going to ride Jackadam in the Gold Cup, and I was going to ride Valsar Lido in the Ryanair. And then Willie changed something at home Saturday, put him out in the field. I went to Cheltenham Sunday, so did Willie. David stayed at home. David rode him Sunday morning, rode him Monday morning, when he should have been on the horse box to go. David rode him out at home, and David rang Willie and said, this horse is starting to spark. Willie said, grand. brought him to Cheltenham Tuesday, declared him. I got off Azertyuiop to ride him, and he bolted in the Ryanair, but he wasn't going. And then tragically he got had an accident at home in the summer, but I don't think we ever saw the potential of him. He didn't, sorry. After winning the Ryanair, he went and fell at the first down the back in Aintree. That's right, the Rod Blue Catil in the top of him. And we just never saw the best of him.
He was only 7 as well when he died, wasn't he? He was a young horse.
Yeah.
Next which is, I want to admit how sort of stupid I am, really. If someone had, before I just reminded myself of the horse, doing the work for this, if someone said to me, Steve Douvan, I'd say, well, the horse never quite lived up to, I thought he was going to be really, really top class. I've then looked at his record. He's won 10 out of 13 chases, including 6 Grade 1s. I mean, you know, off the wall, crazily wrong. What's your overall memory and feeling about Douvan?
I suppose at the time he was the year after Vautour, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And what's my memory of Douvan? I know Willie and Patrick would have had him the other way around. Douvan and Vautour. I would have them Vautour, Douvan. That was the way I always felt. Douvan was a great horse to ride. Loads of gears, loads of pace. To me, he never had the power to jump that Vautour had. But like, he was brilliant in a Supreme, brilliant in an Arkle. Unfortunately got injured and pulled up in a champion chase. When he came back then, probably going to win a champion chase. He was 4 in front doing the half speed of Patrick. I got in the fall of Falboon photo. Patrick rode him in the champion chase. He fell at the last ditch. But I guess to me, he had a brilliant record. But when you look at the best horses, so Under Sceaux never missed a day. Kauto Star, Hurricane Fly. Part of being the best is also being the soundest. And Douvan, unfortunately, didn't have that physical resolution. He was in odd shape, and he just didn't physically have the matchup for the ability he had. But you have to have both to be the very best. And whilst he was an incredibly talented horse, he didn't have the resolution that Vautour had. Vautour had an accident and died, but whereas Douvan, I watched him in the RDS this year, he's still trotting around the next racehorse classes, and he's a great character, and he was a beautiful horse, huge, tall horse, but physically he just wouldn't stay together for him, and he was a brilliant racehorse. I loved riding him, but if you gave me the choice, give me Vautour.
And it's going to be 2 out of 2 at the festival for Mullins and Walsh. Under Sceaux makes every yard most of the way and wins the Arkle comfortably.
Inside and Grugy, who puts his white blaze in front. Under Sceaux, though, he's battling back. Under Sceaux now takes the lead and races the line. Under Sceaux wins a classic renewal of the Tingle Creek.
The final fence, Under Sceaux. Oh, he was superb. Under Sceaux now muscling his way up the hill, chasing hard his sub-lieutenant. He's driven out by Ruby Walsh. He's going to get there. Under Sceaux wins the Ryanair.
Under Sceaux. He was the horse that I would say was in the Willie Mullins camp, was a warrior.
Oh, iron horse. And that's what he was. And brilliant days on him. Did plenty of travelling too. You talk about horses competing and being campaigned to show their best. Like, his was a campaign of longevity. It was a campaign like Clarence House's, Tingle Creeks, races in Ireland, France. He was everywhere. And he was a hardy little horse. He was hard on himself. He was always keen, always taking you places. Won an Arkle. Happened to run into Sprinter Sacra in a champion chase, but sure, hey, that happens. And then probably gave me a bigger thrill than any horse to actually ride in a race when he won the Ryanair. Like,
why?
he was,
what was
like, he was 2.5. You were thinking, gotta hold him some little bit early. Jumped across the middle, down into the home straight. He's starting to take you, but whilst physically you could have the arm wrestle and stop him, that wasn't going to work. So you had to let him go to the edge of taking you, so barely onto the bridle, and then got up past the stands, down into the back straight, jumped the first well, water well, and he's starting to go. So I'm thinking, I'm letting you go without letting you off. Ping the first ditch, plane, let fly at the next ditch, fence on top of the hill, round the corner to the fourth last, and I'm thinking, I've done a hell of a lot here, I can't miss from here on. Ping the fourth last, and he rolls off down to the third last, and you know he's getting up to the edge of flat out. Third last is running down, coming at you, and he's long, and just lay onto him, wing at the wings, down into the dip, up off the bend, 2 fences on the new course, it's a long way up there to the second last. And because, I don't know, to me, horses would always answer a certain amount of questions in a race. Because he had done all the jumping in the first part, I had only asked him at the third last. So in my mind, I haven't asked him for too much yet, he's not going to let me down. So second last, pinged it. Again, when we rounded off the bend, actually, Cheltenham was the first year I can remember Cheltenham had put a big screen for the people way off down the grandstand, but that big screen came into your eyesight as a jockey on the new course when we rounded off the bend. Yeah. So I knew when I looked up, without looking back, that the Maroon of Jigginstown were 5-6 behind me. So I knew I wasn't home and dry, that I had to keep going, but I never had to look back. So the lads could think, but the lads behind me would know what I was thinking. Yeah. But it was the trail, it was the jump and the speed, the half where you're in control, but you're only on the edge of control. Yeah, it was thrilling.
God, sounds amazing. I mean, and you say he ran in everything, as you said, Tingle Creeks, Arkle, the Ryanair. He placed in a Ryanair as well. Yeah. I mean, he took on.
Oh, he was in Otay. I remember coming back from injury, and Barry Garrity had ridden him in Otay. I went and rode him in Otay. He won a Prix at Barca. Didn't get home with a French champion hurdle over 3 miles at the very end of his career, but he was an iron little horse, and he was a brilliant horse to ride.
Steve, I'll let you talk about the next.
Yeah, it will be, in the Willie years, it'll be just about my favourite horse that you rode for Willie, Faugheen. I'm sure you're going to tell me that Hurricane Fly was better. I obviously I'm bad to but I just thought his best. Faugheen was a terrific horse, and grade 1 from 2 miles to 3 miles. Not start with a point background, but he had enough pace to win Christmas hurdles, easily. And when he was good, he was pretty good, wasn't he?
He was brilliant. He was brilliant. He got injured as a bumper horse.
Yeah.
And then I won a 2.5 mile maiden hurdle on him at Punchestown quite early in the year. He went to Navan and won over 2.5. And very rarely Willie would have tied me 2 instructions or made a said point that he wanted carried out, but he wanted Faugheen to win doing as little as possible. He said, don't want this horse off the bridle. He got hurt last year. He missed Cheltenham as a bumper horse. He has to get there. Don't let him off the bridle. So I won him over 2.5. He went to Limerick at Christmas. Emmet won on him over 3 miles. And then he went to the Ballymore, which is next start. And again, obviously didn't get the instructions about not getting off the bridle when you got to Cheltenham, but he won without ever having to be fully opened up. And then he started as a 2 mile hurdler. And at the time you had Hurricane Fly, again, I was being the greedy guts. Hurricane Fly's going to Leopardstown, Faugheen's going to Christmas. He's going to Campton. Divide and conquer. And yeah, he had class, pace, he had everything. He was an okay jumper of hurdles. He wasn't a spectacular jumper of hurdles, but he had that one at Kempton. Where did you run after Kempton? Don't think he did.
Before Cheltenham?
Yeah.
That's a good point. I'm going to say I don't think he did.
Hurricane Fly went both places.
I don't think
so
he did.
He went straight to Cheltenham. He did, because I remember standing Willie wondering would he run him in the Red Mills. And I said, why you want to run him in the Red Mills? Well, he said he hasn't had any practice in behind. He's made the running in all these races. And I said, yeah, but he'll be making the running in the champion hurdle too. He said, are you sure? So I'm certain. So there's no pace in the champion hurdle. So there's no front runner. So he'll be making the running. Well, then I'm not running him. So he didn't run the Red Mills. Went to Cheltenham, lined him up, made the run to the champion hurdle, and he bolted in.
Great conversation.
And then he bolted in. Came back the following year. I got too clever in the Morgiana. Was worried about Nichols Canyon. He was quite keen. Both horses having their first run of the season, and David Mullins got it spot on in Nichols Canyon. Faugheen got beat. My fault. I should have why did they make the run again? Why did they let the other one make the run? So that was definitely one of my lesser days. And then he won his next start, and then they all clashed in the Irish champion hurdle. Nichols Canyon, Faugheen and Arctic Fly.
Yeah.
And we went toe to toe, and he ended up winning a country mile. But was it 18 months before he ran again?
Yeah. That was almost his best day, don't you think?
It was.
Yeah, he was great that day. I thought, anyway, right up with, the best we've seen in recent times.
I know, but was it the right thing?
Yeah.
Not sure.
The final flight, and it Hurricane Fly just led. Peddler's Cross is battling on well. Hurricane Fly and Ruby Walsh, Peddler's Cross and Jason McQuire defending his unbeaten record. But Hurricane Fly's got half a length and forges on, and Hurricane Fly wins the champion.
Stay on up the hill, Hurricane Fly driven out to the line. Can he regain his title? He can, the second in history. Hurricane Fly is the champion hurdler again.
They're racing inside the last 150 yards. Our colour, Hurricane Fly, is hard ridden on the inside. He's coming back. He's battled like a demon to win it for the 4th time.
How many grade 1s was it? 20?
Just the 22.
22 grade 1s for little Hurricane Fly.
Wow.
He was, and maybe, I suppose, from a point of view of maybe English racecourse, what did you ran in 4 champion hurdles, one lost. But he was a brilliant horse to ride. He was magic, and I would say Papillon was arguably the best jumper I ever rode in the Power. And if you said to me tomorrow, we're all in their heyday, you're going to go to Burley, I'd be thinking, I want Papillon. I ain't riding anything else I ever rode. I want Papillon. But as regards hurdlers, Hurricane Fly was, to me, unique. Like in all the hurdle races he ran in, I don't think he ever looked like falling. Or ever you thought, Jesus, he was lucky there.
Yeah.
Like he never stepped and just got there. He never jammed on and gave them height. Like he had it down to the finest art, but never looked like getting it wrong. You could, and even once or twice in Leopardstown, and there were some great races in Leopardstown with jet ski and with Our Connor and different horses, but you could go to the last hurdle in him as if it wasn't there. You could just ride him down as hard as you could, and you knew he was looking at it. He was either going to let fly or take a half straight. He was just so good. I mean, you different times when you really wanted him, like, and you got to the last hurdle and you were a long way off it, and you go on, like he'd get there. His shoulders would rise, his head would get down, you'd feel his shoulders lifting almost up either side of his neck as he stretched, and his feet would go out. And but as long as his feet going out, they never went. They'd always go out to get over. They never just went that way. They were never in fear of clipping the hurdle. They always went over it. Down they went. Hind legs had passed him, and he was galloping as quick, and he was landing. Yeah. He was just magical to ride over a jump.
Was he like that from day one?
Day one.
They're born with it, basically.
He just loved it.
Yeah.
He loved jumping. And jumping made him a better horse. You look at so many different horses, and look, even at the moment, like Vauban to me is a classic example. Good Triumph winner, didn't progress. Not just that, he jumps, he gets from A to B, but you look at him back in the flat, looks like a different horse. I rode so many horses like that. This fella jumping just made him a better horse. And you see different horses even that are decent jumpers of hurdles that they go chasing. Special Tiara always reminds me. It's an okay hurdler. It was twice the chaser. Henry had a couple of them. Don't put the kettle on.
Yeah.
Don't put the kettle on. Put the kettle on.
Put the kettle on.
Put the kettle on. She was the same. Fences made her better, and hurdles made Hurricane Fly a better horse. Considerably a better horse. They didn't make Celestial Halo a better horse. If anything, they made him slightly below what he was, the flat horse. But they made Hurricane Fly a better horse. And he had guts, he had speed. As he got older, he got easier to ride, maybe got a bit slower. But, oh Jesus, it was some... And there's some great tactical races I rode him in as well. I'll give him an ordinary ride in his second champion hurdle. I was worried about Binocular and Rock on Ruby was gone. And I never got involved in the race, never even got close to winning the race. But yeah, I loved riding him.
Could you pick one of those grade ones that you got the most joy, thrill out of? Would it have been Cheltenham? Would it have been something at Leopardstown?
Definitely to win the first champion hurdle on him was it was my first champion hurdle as well. That was special. I'd been out injured. He got very keen. Dunguib was on my boot. He was free. And he had to dig in, ping the last, beat Peddler's Cross, who was unbeaten at the time as well. That was a huge day, and it was a big day for me. I'd been out injured for a long time, and I'd won the first in Champagne Fever. He won, Quevega won, and I remember coming back, like, and people, you know, wondering, like, should I be getting back on a lot of the horses I was getting back on, question marks. You know, you love that too.
The doubters.
Oh, yeah.
The last of the Willie Mullins horses we'll talk about, primarily for the poignant, sentimental reasons, would be Kemboy. I mean, a wonderful racehorse in any regard, but to end your career in the fairy tale fashion that you did when you won on Kemboy must have been something very, very special.
It was. I think I only rode him 3 times. I think. Won a maiden hurdle on him. He won 1 division of a maiden hurdle in Limerick on the inside track on a Tuesday. And I think Cadmium, who ended up winning atop him, won the other division. And I remember getting off and coming back into Supreme Racing at the time and saying to them that, yeah, Kemboy is the speedy one, Cadmium will be the stayer. It ended up completely the other way around. Yeah, won on him an entry and went back to Punchestown. By luck I ended up on him, really. Through the winter we had a couple of Gold Cup horses. Bell's Hill, Kemboy, Album Photo. So Album had fallen at the previous year in the RSA. Came back to Punchestown and was going to win. Ran out. He started back. I won on him in Tramore, Album Photo. And it annoyed me when I thought about it 6 months later. But when you looked at it, if I had given enough consideration to the figures, the performance was outstanding. Just looked at it in a sense that he won the race. Kemboy, David Mullins had won the Savills on him. He was going straight to Cheltenham. I rode Bell's Hill. He had been very good the year before. I rode him at the Dublin Racing Festival and he won the Irish Gold Cup. Probably got sucked into homework, rode Bell's Hill in the Gold Cup. But I knew on Wednesday evening that I was riding the wrong horse in the Gold Cup. I knew, and he'd be on about 40 other declarations, and that's why they're great for punters. Maybe they work for owners, but it's why as a rider they're a nightmare. Some people say, at least I know where I'm going in 2 days' time. I don't care where I'm going in 2 days' time. I want to be going to ride the right horses the following day. And I knew after riding Min in the Champion Chase that the quick round in Leopardstown had left its mark on Min. He didn't want to jump in the Champion Chase. And I rode Bell's Hill in the Gold Cup. He didn't want to jump either. So I knew going out to ride that in the Gold Cup that I was on a wing and a prayer that there's a chance this fella was going to do it. Min did. He pulled about the jump in 7. Album Photo won the Gold Cup. I had been trying for years to win a Gold Cup for Willie Mullins, and Paul Towland had just nailed it. And since then it's gone on and won 2 more. But went to entry, rode Kemboy, going back to Punchestown, probably had my belly full of Bell's Hill. Paul's riding Album, ended up on Kemboy, booked out, made the run-in. I was planning to retire that week. I'd won a Classical Dream the day before, but it was going to be from the Irish Gold Cup, that Punchestown Gold Cup onwards. And Kemboy took me out of my misery good and quick. Put me out of my misery. But he was accurate jumper, very accurate. It's a nice way of describing him. He was very tough. That day in particular, he excelled. I suppose going right-handed probably suited him a bit better than going left, even though he won at entry and he won at Leopardstown. Did always shimmy off to his right, but that was a wonderful day, and I got the ending that I was looking for, that I hoped I would be able to get, and it couldn't have come soon enough.
Yeah, brilliant. We're going to move on to a couple of horses, or a few horses from the Paul Nicholls. It's not chronological. The first one is almost better known for a couple of his defeats than some of his fantastic wins. Azertyuiop. I know you're a person who likes to win, but I mean, he got fantastic credit for giving, I don't know, £19, £20, whatever it was, and just failing in the Victor Chandler to Sceaux, and he took part in a vintage Tingle Creek. An absolute tremendous race. You know, I'm sure you remember it well. But that was
probably haven't watched it as much as Barry Geraghty, but
no, but it was a great race, wasn't it?
It was.
Was it Moscow Flyer, World Chief, and
it was a great race.
Yourself?
It was a brilliant race. They were a great generation of horses, and they campaigned against each other. But you need a generation to make a vintage crop.
Yeah.
And he was my first Cheltenham winner for Paul. He won the Arkle. The first year I was riding for Paul Nicholls, he bolted up, went back the following year and won the champion chase, Moscow Flyer, stepped straight into the ditch and got rid of Barry, and he was good that day. And then went, maybe before that, Azertyuiop had beaten him in the Victor Chandler. But I remember thinking exactly how you've told it. Fitzhugh rode Azertyuiop. Azertyuiop had been second to him in the Arkle. And then the Victor Chandler at the old Ascot, Azertyuiop getting all the way, it just chinned him. I was injured. He ran the Halland Gold Cup in the fog. I can remember watching him from the Crown Casino in Melbourne in the Halland Gold Cup. And they came out of the fog, coming to the second fence in Exeter, and there was no sign of him. You don't see a fell at first. But he was a really, really good horse. Obviously went to Tingle Creek and Moscow Flyer. I suppose you look back on it in the cold light of day now, I was obviously in the Azertyuiop camp, and you never want to admit it, but Moscow was the best of the three of them, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think overall, looking at their career, I think it'd be fair to say.
You look at the
not
three,
by a lot, but
not by a lot, but I think Moscow just was better horse than Azertyuiop and Well Chief. But I would probably think that Azertyuiop and Well Chief contributed to making Moscow Flyer as good as he was.
Indeed, exactly that.
Absolutely.
As you say, you can't really gauge a horse for being one of the all-time greats if they're not beating something that you can
and
use.
That's where you could, and that's what made, I suppose, Moscow Flyer. But they were great times. Like even like going to Sandown for those Tingle Creeks, the crowd, the atmosphere, the buzz, they were brilliant times.
Another outstanding 2-mile chaser that you rode for Paul was Masterminded. And I remember interviewing you after he'd won at Aintree, and I'd said something along the lines of, after he did what he did in the first year that he won the champion chase, and he won that handicap, then he won then the Game Spirit, and then he won the Game Spirit he bolted up in. The champion chase he bolted up at. People kind of expected him to do that almost every time he ran, and you then said to me, yeah, Lionel Messi doesn't always score a hat-trick every time he goes out to play, which is a bit unfair on Masterminded because he's not a machine. But that was the type of performance he produced in that first season with Paul. You wanted to see it again and again because it was so outstanding and so mind-blowing.
It was. I rode him in Auteuil the previous May for Guillaume Macaire in the Grade 1 4-year-old chase on Grand Steep Day, in Clive Smith's colours actually, and that was 2.5 miles, 2.6 maybe, 2.5, I think it was around that trip. I remember thinking he got tired. I realised 12 months later he didn't stay after he got beaten in Aintree. But he came back to Paul's, his first run was at Exeter in a graduation chase, I think. Didn't get very far. He was brave. He could let fly. He was lucky at a Game Spirit a couple of years later at the last with me. But again, a bit like Hurricane Fly, he jumped from his shoulders. He thought his shoulders always rose, a great technique, and won the handicap in Sandown.
Quite easily.
Quite easily. But that was another one of those horses. I remember Paul Nicholls being so confident. About 5 months before Strong Flow won the Hennessy, I came back from, I was on holidays in America, and he got me to go to Kelso to ride a horse he said was going to win the Hennessy. I remember thinking, getting on the plane, heading to Kelso in May. Jesus. When I went across the ring to ride him in that handicap chase, I was going to leg me up, he says, chap, this will win the champion chase.
Wow.
Right? And then he went and won the Game Spirit where he beat 5 pound steadies, and he lined up. And I suppose as I got older, and maybe even more so since I stopped riding, and you watch how races form and even put more attention to how races form, he got the perfect setup for a performance like that in the champion chase. Like, they went so fast in the first 4 furlongs. No, I was a long way off the pace, but they went so fast that the majority of the horses in the race were actually beaten by the sixth fence. And then it was Masterminded and Vautour steadies down the back. And by the time we got to the top of the hill, Masterminded had broken Vautour steadies, and down he came as a 5-year-old that couldn't win the champion chase. And not alone did he win it, he won it 25 lengths with his mouth open. It was an incredible performance. He went the entry then, probably off the back of, I wouldn't mind, like, you think you should learn, right? You think you should learn from these things, the mistakes you make when you look back. So after that brilliant performance at Cheltenham, I expected him to back it up at entry. Didn't do it. I went to entry, God knows how many years later, and Mean put up a similar performance at entry, and I still rode him at Punchestown 10 days later, expecting him to do the same thing again. And of course he didn't. Undersaw beat him. So you never really learn from your we'll write these things down or something. But yeah, that day was a spectacular performance. It was just incredible, and the speed he won. He wasn't as good the following year, but he was a dual champion chase winner, and he obviously ended up going back a couple of years later to win over 2.5 at entry as a 7-year-old, I think it was, and then got injured in the King George. But yeah, he was a magic horse, wasn't he? It's a magic era horses in Ditchy. He'd walk into that, drive into that front yard, Kauto, Denman, Big Bucks, Masterminded, whatever else to be there. Just an army of aeroplanes.
You've done TV before. Some of those horses you just mentioned, we're going to go on to talk about. One of the great hurdlers, I think it's fair to say, and without being over the top, would be Big Bucks. Wasn't always going to be a hurdler. It was going to be a chaser early on. You tell us about that, but your association with him, you must have fantastic memories of Big Bucks.
I think our association got better the further we went, myself and Big Bucks. You talk about jumping making Hurricane Fly a better horse. Jumps definitely made Big Bucks a lesser horse, because Big Bucks going to every jump would slow down. He'd see the jump coming and he'd start to slow it down till he put himself right. And then no matter how slow he was going, he couldn't move his feet quick enough to get them in the right place either. But he just had an unbelievable engine. Like, he'd so much natural ability. And winning a handicap on New Year's Day, had to be good in him, didn't I? Win a handicap on Big Bucks.
Yeah. Did you back him?
Hey, it was a good day. That was a good day.
Won the Cleeve, getting weight from Punchestown.
Yeah.
Went back to the stairs then, Punchestown, Casbah Bliss, Big Bucks, level weights. Punchestown was favourite, was he?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think Casbah Bliss was second favourite.
Yeah, very possibly, yeah.
And I think Big Bucks was 4, 5, 6 to 1 or something. And just following Christoph Pugh and Barry Geraghty, creeping away on Big Bucks, and Barry rounded off the bend, travelling really well in Punchestown. He had a peep. I knew he was waiting for me. So I went to his tail, he started to pick up, and as he picked up, Big Bucks kept picking up with him, and you just always knew on Big Bucks you were never anywhere near the bottom of what was in the tank, ever. Missed the last, regathered him up again, Punchestown has gone another half a length, gathered him up and away he goes again, and he just went on. Now I used to love riding him. He was never pull. Very unlikely in a hurdle race he was going to fall, because he was that careful or safe. He never ever stood too far back. He was always going to take another stride and clatter it. And he just didn't like really, he wasn't a front runner.
Yeah.
Now he ended up, as people watched him and opposition jockeys got to know him and looked for ways to beat him, that of course they would stand behind you at the start. And ended up having to ride him more and more prominent as he got older. But as he got older, he got more accustomed to doing that, and he learned, and eventually he could make the running on him. But in his early days, as soon as he get to the front, he'd say, okay, that's it, we've done enough. And he'd just pull himself up. So you'd always be hunting him along, making him look like he was going a little bit worse than he was. But when you really wanted him, like an AP won a few on him, but like AP style of riding, where AP always loved to make you look like he was going worse than he was, probably suited him more so than the way I rode with legs and have him travelling, because I could be sat second last hard on the bridle, which mightn't have suited everybody either. But he'd some engine. He had an unbelievable engine.
You were saying earlier that when one year you only had 2 winners at Cheltenham, Quevega and Big Bucks, and they were obviously the 2 best stayers, I guess, around at that time. They never met. You were telling me you'd be on Big Bucks' side big time if they ever met. Is that right?
I would have been, yeah. I think he was, yeah, definitely. I think he would have. I wouldn't have any doubt actually. She was a brilliant race mare, but she was well placed, and they were never going to meet as long as I was trying to do them.
So they did the right thing, missing out, perfect, not meeting, basically, not going, sticking to the mare's hurdle was, got your vote on because you could ride 2 winners, and it was the right decision as well.
Steve, I'm greedy.
Yeah, fair enough, nothing wrong with that.
I was only suiting Ruby.
Yeah.
And this is the moment that all punters have been waiting for. One of the festival bankers who fluffed his lines 12 months ago puts the record straight in no uncertain fashion. Denman won the Royal Sun Alliance.
But he comes back giving as much as he promised last season. Denman has won the Hennessy with top weight.
As they race up towards the finish, it's going to be another big one for Ruby Walsh and Paul Nicholls. What a hand he's got in the Gold Cup. Ruby and Denman win the Lexus.
And he's too good for them. Denman is destroying them. And a new star. It's Denman who wins the Gold Cup. Denman pulling out more from What a Friend. He's under 11 stone 12. One of the great performances in jump race history. Denman by 3 legs to What a Friend. Denman is keeping on. Another demolition job from Denman. And he wins his second Hennessy.
The Nicholls, I don't know how to sum up. I mean, tough, whatever, but Denman we're going to talk about, who was just probably wasn't a lovable character, I don't know, but he was a lovable horse from the outside. He was great.
He was a lovable character. He was awkward as a young horse. Christian rode him, I think, at Wincanton.
Yeah.
I won. Christian rode him at Bangor another day. I won the
Challow.
Challow.
Moved to New Year's Day.
Cheltenham. And even first time round, he wanted to go up the chute to the winning post instead of going out into the country. And then second time round, he wanted to go out into the country instead of going up to the winning post. But that was him. Won a 2 mile beginners at Exeter as a chaser. I got beaten him as a novice hurdler at Cheltenham. Didn't go fast enough. Nicanor beat him. He was big and raw and keen, and you never felt, as a young horse, you felt you were just about in control. You weren't really in control of steering or pace or anything on him. He was a hard horse to ride, and because of his size and his power, he just wasn't that easy to know exactly what you were doing and you were going the right way, and he just wasn't. But he was a brilliant jumper.
Yeah.
Exceptional jumper. And even as a novice, he won over a shorter distance at Exeter. He was really good. Then went and won, I think it was Cheltenham or Newbury, might have won a both. Went to the RSA. Again, I'm just about in control of him, but he was getting better. Aces 4, I think was the name of the horse, done the splits at the back of the third last. We were stepping on the gas down the hill, and he bolted in. I got injured, surprise, surprise. He came back and won a Hennessy with Sam, absolutely bolted it.
Yeah.
I was standing in a betting shop in Wexford town after being in cryotherapy. Went back into cryotherapy for an hour out of temper after that. But he hosed up, and then Kauto went King George, Denman went Lexus.
Yeah.
Came to Leopardstown, coasted around Leopardstown, quickened up off the bend, won 7 or 8 lengths. And then, I don't know, was it Harry or Paul Barber? Harry Finley or Paul Barber? Someone wanted a decision anyway. I didn't want to give an answer as to what I was going to ride in the Gold Cup, but I elected Kauto. Sam rode Denman in the Aeon. I rode Kauto in the Ascot chase. He won. There was a scare with Kauto then, wasn't there? Was he lame after Ascot? Nearly sure he was. But he made it to the Gold Cup, and on the day only one turned up. And unfortunately the following year, when the two of them went back again, still only one turned up. I don't think, having ridden them both, that they ever both turned up on the same day. And they were two fabulous racehorses. Obviously Denman went back to win a Hennessy.
That was that.
I think why people love him. It's a bit of a throwback to, Arc or whatever, giving loads of weight to horses, and so people remember those Hennessy's fondly. They were great weight coming performances.
What was the mark? He won the Hennessy off, was it 174?
Well, I was going to say 176, but you're probably right. But whatever.
Mid 170s.
Yeah, it was 161 the first time.
Yeah.
It was a handicap, certainly. Look back.
Well, absolutely.
I mean, he gave What a Friend, was it £20 or something like that?
What a Friend had won the Did he go on to win, or had he won?
Betfred Bowl.
Or Betfred Bowl.
Yeah.
One or the other. That season or the season before, he won the Betfred Bowl.
It's a terrific weight performance.
It was, and even then, he'd gotten from a horse that you couldn't control for the want of going or running left or running right early. By the time he got to his second Hennessy, he didn't want to line up.
Yeah.
Like he didn't want to. At that stage, like he was thinking, nah, you know, whatever you're thinking yourself, but I'm not having it today.
I went to Paul's Yard once, just to back it up what you're saying, and the box was next to Kauto's.
Yeah.
And as we got there, Kauto was looking over the book, really interested in what was going on. And as I'm convinced, as Denman saw us coming, he just turned around to show us his backside. I thought that summed him up beautifully.
Yeah, but like he lined up. Like I remember at the start in that Hennessy, I think I was on the very outside. I couldn't get him. He wouldn't go with them. I knew I needed to get away with the weight. I couldn't afford to give away ground at the start. I needed to get out and at least get in some sort of position. But I couldn't get him to line up. I think I lined up. The only thing outside me was the line of trees. Because the ambulance is on the inside in Newbury. That wasn't even outside me. And didn't take me down the back, cross fence, back up by the straight. And he half took me going to the winning post. Yeah. And he realised he's coming back to the gate, so I left him straight on, pinged the water. Wasn't mad keen about heading out in the next circuit either, but he started to go then, and he rolled along, flew the fifth last, the cross fence, fifth last, and then obviously What a Friend came to him going to the last. What a Friend missed it, Denman jumped it and grounded out to the line, but that was some performance. And he got, to be fair, you talk about fans, spectators, racecourses, he got some reception that day.
Yeah, he did, yeah, he did. Yeah.
Like to a person, they stood to clap him, and rightly so. He was.
And that type of campaign, which we don't really see again, seeing a horse of his calibre in a handicap, I can see why traditional people who like a bit of tradition in the sport must. I mean, Steve York. Yeah, that's.
I'm old. Yeah, you're right.
Well,
no, you're right. It's good to see. It is good to see. I can understand why they're not, but it's. Yeah, I mean, some of the reasons Arkle was rated so highly wasn't his Gold Cup wins, that he was giving ridiculous amount of weights to very good horses and beating them. So I don't say it's right or wrong, but it's nice. It was refreshing, if the right words.
But maybe that's where I had Arkle, where his handicap rating is. And when you look at handicap ratings now, when you think about it, you think that Denman off 170, whatever it was, had to give What a Friend, how much did we say?
£20, I think it was.
£20. So the Betfred Bowl winner was rated somewhere in the mid 150s, 160.
Yeah.
What's a Betfred Bowl winner rated now?
170.
Yeah.
So in theory, when you think about it, perhaps Galloping the Champ, Redman's Game, would be absolute good things in a handicap, because I'd say they're probably £15 back from ability-wise where their rating should be.
Yes.
But I would argue everything else is 15 too high. They're too close. That gap from those to those isn't big enough.
And now the hill has to be climbed for Kauto Star. Ashley Brook is trying very hard. Kauto Star has to be shaken up again. Kauto Star's going to hold on. It's Kauto Star. He found a bit extra when needed to win. And Kauto Star's clearing away. There's a furlong to go on the flat in the Betfair Chase. The question was, would he stay 3 miles? Well, he stayed it all right today. Kauto Star, firmly in command, wins the Betfair Chase, hard held.
Heading up towards the line in the William Hill Tingle Creek. It's going to be a second victory in succession in the race for Kauto Star. It's 3 miles, 2 miles, it makes no difference. He's just very, very good.
Going towards the final fence, it can be tricky. Can he get over? Kauto Star, he pedals through it, but he landed on all 4 legs. That's what counts. He's 5 or 6 lengths clear of Exotic Dancer, and Kauto Star lights up Kempton, and Kauto Star wins the King George. It's Kauto Star in front. Kauto Star steals the show and wins the Gold Cup.
The final fence between Kauto Star and History, the scene of oh many scares, but this time he's faultless, and Kauto Star is over from Denman in second, Exotic Dancer and Neptune Collonge, then My Will and Barbershop, and ridden out towards the line. What a week for Ruby Walsh, his 7th winner. Kauto Star makes history, the first horse to regain the Tote Sport Cheltenham Gold Cup.
As they race up towards the line, and Kauto Star, what a comeback here at Haydock. He's going to win his 4th Betfair Chase, and Kauto Star is still the king.
The steeplechaser of a lifetime. Kauto Star is in front. Long runs closing, but Kauto Star has done it. He's won 5 King Georges.
But we are saving what we would assume is the best for last. It's not always a given because some people have Denman as the best or the favourites. But I'm going to take the flyer that Kauto was the best that you rode. I've heard you say it enough times that if you had to make a choice, it would be Kauto. And I wanted to get your first impression of that win at Newbury, his first win. One of the most impressive debuts I've ever seen from a horse over fences.
Locksmith and Foreman, wasn't it?
That's it.
29th of December.
The December meeting at Newbury.
Yeah. We come from Leopardstown. I was in the car with Timmy and Jim Cullity, coming from. We'd obviously been in Leopardstown the day before, so we were into Newbury on the 29th, and he only had 10.7. I think, had he? 10.
Yeah, Foreman went off favourite for the race. That's what I remember.
AP rode him.
Yeah.
Timmy rode Locksmith. Timmy Murphy. I rode Kauto Star. But I remember only realising halfway to Newbury that actually Kauto Star was only a 4-year-old, and that he only had 10.4 or 10.7 or whatever it was. Thinking, Jesus, what do we have last night? But I remember going thinking, Paul said he had a really nice horse to novice chase. Grand. But we were looking at it thinking, 4-man Irish champion, hurdle winner, Locksmith had done nothing wrong. It's going to take some performance. And Jesus, like he came down the straight, like in his mouth, he just was in a different league to the two of them. And they were two really good horses. Jumped from fence to fence and hosed them. You're thinking, wow, this is some 4-year-old.
So did you know then straight away?
Yeah, it was just different. It was just different. And he was just power, pace, athleticism. He had everything. Went to Exeter, fell, got back on him, still nearly won. And he would have won, you know that. I know it's not allowed anymore, but these were the good old days. This is history. He had a bar bit.
Yeah.
So when they got back up on him, the left rein was over the bar. So I only had one rein. So when I hunted him down to the last, I actually couldn't go, whoa, whoa. So in fairness to Kauto, he done that and popped it. And got beat, short head or whatever it was. Not a great decision that was.
Then he was off, wasn't he?
Then he was off, came back and ran the Holland Gold Cup, finished 3rd. Dickie won it on, can't remember, one of Philip Hobbs's.
Yes.
He finished 3rd. Where'd he go after that?
Moncaghoston.
Moncaghoston. Went to the Tingle Creek. I was injured again. Fitzy rode him. Won the Tingle Creek. And I don't know why, but was his next run the Champion Chase?
Champion Chase, yeah.
I rode him, favourite, 4th fence, fell. Musco Flyer had inflicted probably 7 or 8 defeats on me by then. And then for one last go, kicked me up the track and Cheltenham in front of him. That hurt too. He didn't run then. We caught that day as well. Came back the following year. Gloss probably slightly gone off him a little bit.
But he started off in the Old Roan.
Old Roan, 11.10. Great handicap ride. How far did he win?
A country mile, I believe. He beat Armour Turk out of sight.
I was thinking about the next day, wasn't I? Bolted in. Haydock.
But everybody thought he was going to go for the Tingle Creek because he was a 2-mile campaign would probably be the thing. But
oh no, Paul had lost.
And Paul already.
Paul had lost patience at that stage. Champion, minding him and champion chases and not out running. Bolted up in the Old Roan. He'll get further. I said he will. Haydock, going to Haydock to ride him. Good horses in there. Ollie McGurn, Beaver Salmon, and Chanel McCoy was driving. Don't ask me why Chanel was driving. AP was in the front, I was in the back. But I remember on the way to Haydock thinking, if this horse stays, it's Gold Cup horse. Like the speed he has, the pace he has. Like if he stays, if this can stay, like I'm thinking, this could have won the Champion Chase, but we're actually going to try and make him into a Gold Cup horse. If he stays, this is over. This will just be, this could be it. Went to Haydock, and I can still clear as day remember, it was the old Haydock Park chase course. Jumped the last fence, you had to bypass the ditch and make your way to the winning post. Going by the ditch, looking, pulling down my goggles, had a look, pulled down my goggles and had another look. And like, he went to the line, like he just jumped in.
Running away.
Yeah. Like he just started.
Yeah.
pulled up thinking, oh my God, this is just going to be. That was a Saturday. Following 9 days later on the can't remember the road, around the M25. What's the M you take for Folkestone?
M20.
On the M20, Paul Nicholls rings. There's only eggs left in the Tingle Creek. What do you think? I said, jeez, no. He's a bit keen. I said, we're only after getting him to settle. Like, we want him for the King George. Yeah. Hung up, and I'm thinking, look at him last year, like. He got one fall and he was injured and we didn't see him again. Like, you know what I mean? He could get hurt at home between now and Christmas. Rang him back. Said that to Paul. I agree. Ran him in the Tingle Creek. And by the time he got to the railway fences, he had Vautour steadies on his bended knees.
Extraordinary.
Went to the King George, broke the fourth last fence, stood on top of the last fence, frightened the life out of me and still bolted in. Went to the Aeon, but won well, missed the last, he fell over his tail, missed the last, and then headed on to the Gold Cup. Huge field, 17 runners, I think?
Yeah.
17 runners. And you're looking at it thinking, where's the pace? He goes a bit left, going left-handed is going to suit him. But will he stay 3.25 miles, and he has to settle. He'd been keen in the Aeon, has to switch him off, has to settle. Wasn't living here at the time, we were in the next village up, and we were getting up 9 days before Cheltenham, having to drive around one Sunday morning and going through the Gold Cup field, top to bottom. But I knew Paul Maloney would ride stay to play, not quite the box seat, the seat behind it. And I thought he'd just need to squeak. He'd won the Hennessy that year. Yeah. So if I get on his coattails, I'll follow him. That part worked out, but they crawled in the Gold Cup. Heck, couldn't believe it. AP was behind me on
Exotic
Dancer. And I couldn't believe. We headed out in the second circuit in the Gold Cup, 17 runners, and the 17 of them were still in the bunch. And I'm at the back on the inside. I'm thinking, this is a great place to be. But I did think that there's not another horse in this that would win the Tingle Creek if they started on the Friday, let alone on the Saturday. And crept away. Tony Douvan down the outside and Turpin Green heading to the third last. I thought, Jesus, when he gets to the front, he's just going the left hand down here. And he's going to be, by the time he gets to the home turn, he's going to be in front on the rail, and God bless anyone inside him. So I switched outside, heading to the third last. Dobbs got across, I followed him, but AP got a brilliant run on Exotic Dancer. So I had to commit across in front of him going to the second last. Jumped it well, wasn't great at the last, but the rest is history. He was just, geez, he had everything. He had everything. Probably wasn't as good a horse at any stage the following year. Don't ask me why, but struggled in the old roan. Monet's Garden beat him.
Can I ask you about that? Because I know, to that point, he'd been a brilliant horse with all those performances, and he flew everything, and everything looked easy to him, even when he won the Gold Cup, etc. The Monet's Garden race, where he lost in that race, was the race that I actually loved him even more as a fan of his. I was already a fan, but I felt like you were off the bridle a mile out in that race. Yeah. And every time you squeezed, he offered you, even though he wasn't there.
I know, but maybe I should have realised it earlier and pulled him out of it. Maybe that left its mark on him. But like you said,
he's so honest. He was
every
so
time
honest.
I asked him, he went, I went, I thinking, maybe, no. Monet's Garden beat him.
Again, he gave him a ton of weight in a handicap and got beaten a length and change.
Exactly. Went to Haydock again. He won $1 million the first year, I forgot that. Went to Haydock.
Surprise.
Went to Haydock. Sam won on him.
Yes.
Kempton, I rode him and he won. Then he went to Ascot, which was a slight change of plan from the year before, and then went back to the Gold Cup. And for whatever reason, I don't think he sparked that year at all. At all. Whereas the following year he came back, he started in Down Royal.
Yes.
And he bolted up. Then he went to Haydock and Sam rode him.
Yeah.
He fell at the last, didn't he? And then he won the King George and he had a run to the Gold Cup. But in that second, his third Gold Cup, like we booked, change, and we changed how we rode him a little bit over time as well, riding him a bit more prominently. But like, Jesus, from the top of the hill that year, Steve, he was...
Yeah.
Running away.
Who's coming?
Yeah.
But all the different performances with him.
Well, one or two of his King George wins were just spectacular.
But I actually wasn't sure. So the year he beat, again, it's probably having a rant about something that has nothing to do with this conversation. But he beat Imperial Commander. A snot in the Betfair chase. Down the straight, lash and rein, heads up, heads down. He's down at the right time. Went to the King George. Imperial Commander all bar fell at the second. And Kauto won 25 lengths. He beat Madison de Burle. What was 20 lengths behind him in Haydock?
Madison de Burle.
It wasn't. It was a different track on better ground. But that was the day his rating went from
191, I think he went to.
Up. But to me he wasn't. That was his highest rating. That 191. To me, he was unbeatable the first year.
Right.
Yeah.
To ride him, yet he got his highest rating in the third year.
Down the line.
I was thinking that didn't make sense to me. To ride him, he had not that he was fallible then, but maybe he was to be unbeatable the first year. Now he was mortal, I suppose. But I don't think that King George visually was unbelievable. He won so far. I actually think it was the weakest King George he won.
Interesting.
And on that fallibility thing, and you know, just general in sport, and I know you're a sports fan as well, Ruby, is the more fallibility you show, almost the more people love you.
Everyone wants a comeback king. Everyone wants a hero. And he comes to Punchestown after, what was he, third in the Gold Cup?
Yeah.
Comes to Punchestown, pulls up.
I'm thinking he should be retired.
I remember bringing Isabel, was only a baby, and brought her over to have a picture taken with him. And she wasn't quite a baby, but and I wasn't sure. But I remember then going to Haydock the following year, Friday. I was in Haydock on the Friday. Paul had brought him back, having breakfast with him the following morning in Haydock in the hotel, down from the racecourse, and he's saying, I'm telling you, he said, this will win. Now, Long Run had won the Gold Cup, and Long Run was coming to Haydock, and it was his fourth Betfair chase. This is near towards the end, I suppose. So you buck him out. He's fit to flee. Buck him out. Don't let up. Keep sending him. I remember Clifford ringing me to tell me the same thing. And the only time they told me that before was I'd ridden Seymour Business one day in Wincanton.
Yes.
And Clifford sitting me in the canteen in Ditchy and telling me I couldn't go fast enough. And I couldn't be going hard enough. And I couldn't send him early enough. And I went to Haydock, and like, again, a bit like Denman when he won the Hennessy, the reception he got was huge. It was brilliant. And then going back to the King George to ride him in that, I missed him obviously the year before. Long Run had beaten him, and go back and win a fifth one. But even that day, his jumping, his resolution, he was to the pin of his collar pretty much most of the way. He'd gotten older, he was definitely keeping a little bit for himself, whereas he'd been enthusiastic. Now he was a little bit more lethargic. But geez, he grounded out that day as well. They were great scenes.
His versatility as well, I think, is one of the things which sets him apart. Again, we talked about this beforehand. I know what you're going to say, but I still think it's great. You've ridden some really good 2-milers. We talked about Azertyuiop. We talked about Masterminded, rated 186 after winning the first of his Queen Mothers. And I said, if those two fictionally line up with called all at their best on ground that suits them. I know it's pub talk. It's not real. Again, who would win over 2 miles, not over longer trips? And you had no doubt.
If you wanted to run them in the Champion Hurdle Tuesday, Champion Hurdle Wednesday, Stayers Hurdle Thursday, and the Gold Cup on Friday, I'd ride them in all 4.
Yeah, fantastic, isn't it? And that I think says it all. The versatility is, that's what true champions have.
And pitch him what you want.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah. You bring him on you tell me he's going to turn up each of those 4 days at his best. Yeah, he beat them all.
Wow.
Brilliant.
Of all the occasions you rode Kauto and the 2 Gold Cups, etc., the Betfair Chase, the 5 King George wins, is there one that stood out for the sentiment, the occasion, more than any other?
Maybe from the fairy tale point of view, his last King George or that last Betfair Chase, but for me, when he came back and won the Gold Cup, and not just to win it, to pulverise them. And, go to his level, to go to his cruising speed from the water jump. on the second circuit and say, right, who's coming? And watch them drop off one by one and down the hill and right, send him off the bend, and down he gets to the second last and down to the last with your foot on the throttle and every step of the way to the line. Yeah, that was the day he was. That's the day he could have been rated 191.
We've obviously talked about so many here, Roo. I think it's probably sometimes just worth reminding people, because of how magnificent you are. Obviously, we're here, we're massaging your ego somewhat.
Oh yeah, cheers, Rishi.
But you have ridden so many great horses that people will be watching this and going, you never mentioned this, but Neptune, Collonges, Min, Classical Dream, Tidal Bay, when you won the Lexus on him, you know, Nichols Canyon, who you talked about, York Hill, Jackadam, Silviniaco Conti, Rinkaree nearly very made the list. You also rode Seymour Business, Brave Inca, Imperial Call, Davenport Millennium, Senkos, this, that and t'other, Noland, Asian Maze. I mean, stop if you want. Tyrannus, Twist Magic, Mikael Dagonet, Celestial Halo, Alpha off Briar Hill, Arvika Legionnaire, Champagne Fever, 1,000 Stars. The list just keeps going on and on and on. And even Strong Flow, who you, I think might have been possibly heading in the, you know, the sort of Vautour direction of what could have been.
Could have been, yeah.
How do you sum up the breadth of horses that you've ridden and the fortune that you've had with the horses that you've had in your career as a rider? Well,
a lot of those horses you mentioned were trained by two people. I was fortunate enough to ride a lot of horses for other people, but timing, I suppose, is a huge thing in life. So I guess when I turned professional from being an amateur, Charlie had stopped riding over fences in Ireland, and there was a gap. Paul Carberry was in England riding for Robert Ogden, and there was the start of a gap, and myself and Barry Geraghty were the two that arrived then. Davy Russell followed on a few years later, but we arrived then. So timing was huge. You came at the right time. Ireland, I suppose, in the mid to late 90s, financially was going better than it had been all through the 80s and in the early 90s. Money was coming into the country, and timing was a huge help to my career. And I was lucky in that I was with Paul Nicholls from in the early 90s through to 2011, 12, whatever it was. And then Willie had been getting bigger and bigger, and by 2012 was starting to go to the level he's at now, or starting to get towards that level. So I came across two trainers that were at, I won't say their peaks is the wrong words, that had their best horses at different times, and it fitted in the landscape of my career.
I was going to say that must be something you were good at. I mean, you must have been a political animal to a degree, because these are two great trainers. Whatever statistics you use, Paul Nicholls and Willie Mullins, two of the great trainers, both are strong characters, and that's a compliment, not an insult. There must be times where to keep them both happy. I realise Willie hadn't reached quite the height he'd ridden at, but there still must have been times that to keep them happy would have taken, I say, a bit of political nous, I would have thought.
It did, and it did. So the easiest way to not fall out with them was not to do it. So yeah, Jennifer was my agent, and Jennifer dealt with that. So when she'd say, which one am you going to ride? I'd say, I want to ride that one, or I want to ride that one. She dealt with that. So she got it down the phone. And that wasn't, I didn't get involved in that side of it. Obviously, I was in a layer behind her, but also in that layer behind her was Dad, who had saw and lived through most experiences there are in life. How to deal with people, how to play a situation, how to sort this out. So, you know, I would never answer if I was asked. Such as, I don't know, I wasn't talking to Jennifer. Time, by time, find the answer, we play it the way we wanted to play it.
Well, it worked.
Well, as you say, Rube, I mean, you sort of summed it up beautifully, that life is about timing. And I think I speak on behalf of the majority of racing fans over the last 20 odd years to say that we are lucky to have experienced watching you riding in the saddle. You know,
I was lucky, Rish.
Well, you may say that, but it's been a joy to sit here, reminisce with you. You provided so many wonderful memories for so many people in the sport of horse racing.
Yeah.
Obviously the horses have been a big part of that, but the relationships that you had with them will certainly leave a lasting memory for many of us. So hopefully we've done those horses and you proud over the last however long we've been spending here. But I hope that everyone at home will enjoy it. Ruby, thank you.
Cheers.
Watch live racing now on racingtv.com.